For his oratorical skills, Sri Malaisami's speeches were well received and highly praised. So is his contribution to Tamil literature. He has also authored the path forward towards our vision of Viksit Bharat. Now, Srimati Nirmala Sitaraman to raise the discussion on the glorious journey of 75 years of the Constitution of India.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman, sir.
Honorable Minister, honorable members, time will not be a constraint. In the Lok Sabha, the debate was fructifying in terms of time as well. I will accommodate as many as speakers who may be keen to contribute. And towards that, we will be increasing the time. I will report that at 2 p.m. today. Thank you. Nirmala Sitaraman.
Thank you very much, sir. So let me first start by thanking the Honorable Prime Minister, the Leader of the House, Shri Jagat Prakash Nadda, my party, and you, the Honorable Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to speak in this discussion, marking the historic occasion of 75 years of our Constitution. I feel very honored and equally, I feel humbled that this opportunity has been given to me. I thank the entire House and seek your indulgence if I come up with some thoughts which I'd like to share, which any member could have a difference of opinion. But I start again by paying homage to all the 389 members of the Constituent Assembly. In particular, the 15 women who, in less than 3 years together, took up the arduous challenge and prepared in a very challenging environment the Constitution for India, and which has stood the test of time. Until today, we are extremely proud of the way India's democracy is growing. As we mark the 75th year of our Constitution, sir, it is time, I would think, to reaffirm our commitment to build India, that is Bharat, that shall uphold the spirit enshrined in this sacred document. So with those words, I get into telling about the journey that these 75 years have seen of our Indian Constitution, and also to say why India's Constitution and India today stands out in a very separate league of its own. Sir, let me just remind, and I'm sure very many members of this House will know, that post-Second World War, nearly 50 countries, in fact over 50 countries, had become independent and they had their constitution written, but many have changed their constitutions, not just amended them, but literally changed the entire feature of their constitution. But our constitution has stood the test of time, of course yielded itself to very many amendments, and here therefore I would like to have a few words of what Constitution India expert Dr. Subhash Kashyap had to say. While many constitutions of nations framed after the Second World War have floundered and gone into oblivion, our Constitution successfully faced many crises and survived. This itself is evidence of its resilience, dynamism, and growth potential. Now, India's experience has shown that our constitution remains robust, yielding to several amendments, as I said, which were the need of the hour. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee, had said, and I quote, "I feel, however, good a constitution may be, I feel, however good a constitution may be, it is sure to turn out bad because those who are called to work it happen to be a bad lot. However bad a constitution may be, it may turn out to be good if those who are called to work it happen to be a good lot." Unquote. These are words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, sir. And in this background, therefore, with those words right afresh in our mind, I'd like to discuss about how in the last 7 decades, the living document that our Constitution is, has faced very many amendments. And while looking at those amendments, I'd like to have a touchstone of 4 different elements. One, has the social intent behind any amendment been genuine? And therefore the outcome has been genuine? That's one test I would like to place any amendment on the testing board. Second, I'd like to see if the economic intent and the economic outcome of any constitutional amendment has actually been bona fide and has the outcome helped the society at large. Third, I'd like to test it on the ground of process adopted for it, for the amendment itself. And fourth, the constitutional spirit behind such an amendment. Now, if an amendment can go through these kind of tests, we'll be able to see why India's constitution, going by the words of Dr. Ambedkar, if you had good people who are called to work on it, give good outcomes. If you have, I'm using Ambedkar's words, bad people who are brought to work on it happen to give such outcomes which are discussed. So if I move to talking about those amendments which have gone through these 4 tests, we'll be able to see how the intent and the outcome are justifiable, and people in the history books do write about them. Sequentially, because it is the first ever amendment, I'd like to take about the first Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. So it's been said, and Honorable Prime Minister, while talking in the Lok Sabha, also referred to the fact that there was an interim government in place between 1947, August 15th. The interim government was there before that as well. And it lasted till 17th April 1952, post which an elected government took over the charge. But during 1951, when the amendment for the first Constitutional Amendment Act was passed, it was an interim government and not elected government of India post 1947. Now, this was enacted, therefore, within a year of the commencement of the Constitution. It's worth remembering. In fact, on the issues related to the amendment, or which triggered the amendment itself, which is the freedom of speech and expression, the amendment added 3 more heads to Article 19(2), saying public order could be a cause to restrict freedom of speech, friendly relations with foreign states could be a cause to restrict freedom of speech, or incitement to an offense could also be a cause. These were the amendments brought in the first Constitutional Amendment. Sir, the Supreme Court of India, even in 1950, 1 year before this amendment, had passed 2 landmark judgments that paved the way for freedom of press under Article 19(1)(a). The Supreme Court had ruled in favor of the communist magazine Crossroad Crossroads and the RSS's organizational magazine, Organizer. The Supreme Court had ruled in favor of them in 1950. Many high courts also upheld the freedom of expression of our citizens and ruled in their favor. But in response, the interim government thought that there was a need for a first constitutional amendment, and that was brought in by the INC, and it was essentially to curb the freedom. So India, a democratic country, which prides itself even today about freedom of expression, saw the first interim government coming up with a constitutional amendment which was to curb the freedom of speech of Indians. And that is within 1 year of adoption of the Constitution. So, let me say, sir, that is because the first Prime Minister of this country deplored press scrutiny of his government, even as he publicly praised freedom of the press. There was no doubt about it. And he had scrutinized the amending bill himself before approving its introduction in the Parliament. In the Parliament, sir, it didn't go through smoothly at all. The voices which spoke about it, and I will also refer some of the observations made by eminent members, vehemently who opposed it. Sri Shyama Prasad Mukherjee said, you can pass a law, I'm quoting, sir, you can pass a law and say that the entire task of framing, interpreting, and working the Constitution will be left in the hands of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, assisted by such people whom he may desire to consult. I would think it was a snide remark, saying, oh, you do it all yourself with the people who you choose to have and not with the approval of the Parliament. That was the extent to which Pandit Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was upset about this amendment. Sir, he also said, you're treating this Constitution as a scrap of paper. You have declared preamble of your Constitution that you have done something unheard of in history, that within so short a period of attainment of freedom, you have trusted the people of this country to draft a Constitution. You have given a charter of rights to them. Now, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee says, now you come forward and stab them in the back. You're not working for the benefit of the present generation, but for party ends. But for party ends, unquote. Sir Sri Kameshwar Singh, a member of the Constituent Assembly, also had a lot of comments to pass, and he said, I quote, this Parliament, again, is a provisional one, and it cannot be said to be reflecting the will of the people in the way the Constitution wants Parliament to reflect it. For a government or a Parliament of this kind, it is highly improper to make such fundamental changes in the Constitution without making any reference to public opinion, and that too at the fag end of the strenuous parliamentary session and almost on the eve of a general election, unquote. So scathing remarks were made, and despite these remarks, Prime Minister Nehru went ahead with the amendment. Kameshwar Singh again goes about to say, do they not show, I quote, do they not show utter disregard for the Constitution when they attempt to amend it simply because some of the laws have been criticized and found invalid by the judiciary? Today we hear comments from the Indian National Congress about how the current government is questioning the judiciary. This comment coming from a member of the Constituent Assembly itself says, prior to the First Amendment to the Constitution, which curtailed freedom of expression. The Prime Minister, he furthers, the Prime Minister, I'm constrained to say, that is Sri Kameshwar Singh, the Prime Minister, I'm constrained to say, is creating a bad precedent by sowing the seed of executive despotism, and playing with the supremacy of the Constitution for party advantages. unquote. So there was no doubt this amendment was more raised for the sake of the party or the Prime Minister and the government's image, rather than assuring what the Constituent Assembly had suggested as the Constitution, which was going to be adopted. An amendment bill was passed, the Press Objectionable Matter Act, on 23rd October 1951. We know, therefore, the amendment, the intent, the four tests that I was talking about: social impact and intent, economic impact and intent, the constitutional spirit, and the process adopted for the amendment, all of which are questionable, but nevertheless that amendment was undertaken, and we heard how that amendment till today affects the freedom of speech of this country. Now, it is not as if this 1951 amendment happened all in a sudden. Prior to the amendment and post the amendment, we've had recorded action taken by those government that day, that particular government, in curtailing the freedom of speech. So the act was just waiting to happen, because even before it, they started it, and even after that, they were continuing. What are the examples, sir? Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahani were both jailed in 1949 itself. For what mistakes, sir? During one of the meetings organized for the mill workers in 1949, Majrooh Sultanpuri recited a poem that was written against Jawaharlal Nehru, and therefore he had to go to the jail. Sir, he refused to render an apology for the same and was jailed, therefore, in 1949, along with Balraj Sahni, eminent actor of those days. So that is the level of tolerance. And, today we hold our constitution in our hand, go about it, and say freedom of speech. There is sense of fear in the country. Majrooh Sultanpuri didn't feel it, Balraj Sahni didn't feel it, but the history repeats when it comes to the Congress party. Sir, Congress's record of curtailing freedom of speech didn't confine it with these two people. Nehru, a political biography which was written by Michael Edwards, in 1975 was banned. They banned also a film called Kissa Kursi Ka in 1975, which was directed by Amritlal Nahata, just because it questioned Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and her son, and also the Information Broadcasting Minister then. They banned also John Dalby's book, Himalayan Blunder, because it spoke about some huge crushing military disaster which happened in 1962, the China War. The details shouldn't come out, and therefore they banned that book as well. So this, and a bit later, 1988, Salman Rushdie's book, Satanic Verses, was also banned. So the spree of curtailing the freedom of expression, the spree of containing freedom of press has happened before 49, and during 49 and 50, 51 the act comes, and subsequently also it continues. So it's nothing new. So the amendment, again, a second issue that I'd like to draw your attention to. I said I'm putting it through 4 tests. A 9th schedule was brought into through the first Constitutional Amendment Act. The 9th schedule, sir, is an interesting innovation brought for bypassing judicial review. Why was it brought in? I'm questioning the intent, sir, the constitutional spirit which is not being respected, and the process which is adopted are part of the test I want every amendment to be put to, so that you know whether it is done with the national interest, or is it done with some economic public good, or if it is brought in because there is a social large good which is required to be obtained. No, the 9th schedule was brought in only because they wanted to bypass judicial scrutiny. Any act incorporated in the 9th schedule became fully protected against any challenge in any court of law under any fundamental right. So even the act declared invalid Even worse, today about everything retrospective we talk, saying no, nothing can happen in retrospective, it has to be futuristic. So prospective is what? Whether it is taxation, whether it is benefits, whether it is any clarificatory note. But here we go, the act declared invalid by a court becomes valid retrospectively after being incorporated into the 9th schedule. That's the extent to which they went so that they can bypass judicial scrutiny. And Congress speaks about protecting rights and also on judicial independence, sir. It is shocking. Yes, we'll come. I'll come.
Please,
sir.
Jaramji, take your place.
The third point, sir.
Please. अच्छी डिबेट चल रही है, सुनिए, आपका जब समय आएगा बोलिएगा, प्लीज।
SC, ST, OBC, come on, people who sat over Kelkar. Sir, the next instance which I would like to put through is amendment being enacted to, again, the judiciary was held in contempt. They had to be committed judiciary or else they were not respected at all. Another example, sir. Constitutional amendment was brought in to nullify a judgment that arose in the case of Mrs. Indira Gandhi versus Rajnarayan, wherein the order of the Allahabad High Court setting aside the election of Indira Gandhi was challenged. So, during the pendency of this case in the Supreme Court, the Congress party enacted the 39th Constitutional Amendment Act in 1975. Again, earlier there is a Supreme Court and many other high courts have given clearance, but even then we'll curb freedom of speech, 1951, the First Amendment. Here, a case is pending. Mrs. Indira Gandhi's case is being heard in the court, Allahabad High Court. But no, we are in a hurry. What if the court comes against me? So I come up with an amendment, 39th Constitutional Amendment Act, 1975. Again, valid retrospectively, which added Article 392A to the Constitution. What did it say? It said elections to the President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Lok Sabha Speaker cannot be challenged in any court in the country, and it can be done only before a parliamentary committee. Imagine the extent to which, for a person to save her chair, इसीलिए किस्सा कुर्सी का was banned. कुर्सी बचाने के लिए कोर्ट का वर्डिक्ट आने से पहले ही हम जाकर के अमेंडमेंट करेंगे पार्लियामेंट में. यही है इनके इतने दूर तक जाने वाले विषय, कानून को दुरुपयोग करना, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट करवाना देश के हित में नहीं है, प्रोसेस सही नहीं होता, इससे आर्थिक सुधार कुछ होने वाले नहीं है या सामाजिक सुधार भी कुछ होने वाले नहीं है. व्यक्तिगत और परिवारवाद के लिए ही अमेंडमेंट हुआ है. सर, मैं दूसरी और एक उदाहरण देना चाहती हूं. एक और उदाहरण देना चाहती हूं जिससे सामाजिक सुधार के लिए अगर कोर्ट से एक ऑर्डर आता है, उसको भी, क्योंकि हमारे राजनीति के लिए वो उचित नहीं है, इसीलिए सामाजिक न्याय दिलाने वाले कोर्ट के आदेश के खिलाफ आकर के अमेंडमेंट कानून को करते हो हाउस में. इससे बढ़िया उदाहरण नहीं मिलेगा सर शाहबानू बेगम केस में, जहां सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उस महिला को न्याय दिलाने के लिए, एलिमनी देने के लिए, डाइवर्स के बाद जो पैसा मिलना चाहिए वो दिलाने के लिए कोर्ट से जो आदेश आए, द कांग्रेस पार्टी पास्ड द मुस्लिम विमेन प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ राइट्स ऑन डाइवर्स Act 1986, which denied, it's very important, it denied Muslim women their right to alimony. सामाजिक न्याय, महिला के लिए न्याय मिलना नहीं चाहिए, चाहे वो कोर्ट में से आता है या कुछ और जगह से आता है, हम कानून से उनको नकार देंगे. महिला सम्मान नारी शक्ति बंधन अधिनियम ले आने वाले हमारे पार्टी इधर है. इस सदन में पहला कानून जो पास हुआ वो reservation for women, sir, whereas the small benefit a widowed woman would have, a divorced Muslim woman would have got, was also defeated by this act. The constitutional amendment which the Congress party brought in 1986. So my test again, sir, neither Samajik Nyay, nor Arthik Nyay, nor the process, nor the constitutional spirit, nothing of this was respected. And each time the Congress brazenly, only to help the family, the dynasty, kept amending the constitution, and this is how far they went, even if it affects any particular women who desperately needed the benefit. Sir, I'll come again to one more, the emergency, where that one important touchstone, the process, was completely violated. On 18th December 1976, the then president gave his assent to the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act. During the emergency, when the term of the Lok Sabha was extended without proper justification, they invoked the law to say Parliament has to be in session for 5 years, but we needed to have one extra year, so the act was extended. The Lok Sabha term was extended. And in that extended term, when the entire opposition was put to jail, there was nobody there, and entire opposition was in the jail, then comes constitutional amendment, sir. The process, the touchstone that we need to have, is the process valid? That was a total invalidated process, and therefore I would think this is a blatant abuse which the country majorly agreed on. Sir, only 5 members opposed the bill in the Lok Sabha. There was none in the opposition in the Rajyasabha to oppose it. Imagine, constitutional amendment being passed, entire opposition in the jail. In the Lok Sabha, only 5 people are there to oppose it, even some coming from their own party. And at the Rajya Sabha, no opposition. But constitutional amendment changing the preamble itself happens. The alteration of the preamble to include socialist and secular highlights the disrespect and disregard the Congress has for constitutional processes, principles, and institutions. Sir, the amendments were not about strengthening democracy, sir, but protecting those in power. Again, the process is used for strengthening the family. Sir, Baba Saheb Ambedkar had argued, and I quote, talking about whether the word secularism, talking about whether the word socialism should be included in the Constitution. Baba Saheb Ambedkar argued, I quote, I do not see, therefore, why the Constitution should tie down the people to live in a particular form and not leave it to the people themselves to decide it for themselves, unquote. And therefore, in the original Constitution, the word socialism was not there, as much as the word secularism. So 21 MPs, all opposition, belonging to all opposition parties, were held in jail. Manya Advani ji, Manya Atal ji were all in jail under Preventive Detention Law, Maintenance of Internal Security Act 1971, the infamous MISA. And I know of political leaders who have chosen to have their children named after MISA to remember those black days. And now they wouldn't even mind having alliance with them. Sir, all these together turned the Constitution into a qualitatively different text from what it was originally as adopted in November 26. So I'd just like to come here for one observation. Opposition member, respected Jairam Rameshji, refers to the work of Granville Austin. with a left-handed compliment saying, we read it, but does anyone in the ruling party read it, sir? And he says, masterly book. Yes, masterly book. He tells the full story of the amendment carried out till 1980. So I'm starting from 51, and I'm also going on that journey, talking about amendments, their purpose, their intent, their process. Now, since Jairam Ramesh has mentioned